Hi guys, this is Good Morning Saika, and it's currently around 2 a.m. and this is my Halloween special video. Actually, tulog na lahat ng tao sa bahay namin, so ako na lang yung gising at 2 a.m. So medyo nakakatakot. But anyway, mahilig kasi ako maghanap ng mga unsolved mysteries. Mahilig ako manood mga ganun. So naghanap ako ng mga unsolved mysteries dito sa Pilipinas. At isa ito sa mga kwentong hindi ko makakalimutan. Actually, sobrang eerie niya. Natatakot ako sa kanya. So, pakinggan natin ang kwento. Yeah, let's go. So, it was on May 29, 1967, when a pair of women's legs were found wrapped in a newspaper in a garbage can on Malabon Street, Santa Cruz. A day later, a headless and legless body was found in EDSA near the Guadalupe Bridge in Makati. These parts, which were chopped cleanly, were confirmed to be a part of Lucila Lalu's body. This immediately became a frontliner on newspapers and is regarded as one of the most gruesome cases in recent Philippine history, the victim being commonly called and known as the Chop Chop Lady. In identifying her killer, police had to dig up her past. Lucila Lalu was 28 when she was killed. She was from Pampanga but moved to Manila to look for work. She became a waitress at first. She also met a patrolman, Santiano, who was married, with whom she, nevertheless, decided to live in common law marriage. They had a son together. After earning a sufficient amount of money, she was able to buy out the owners of the Pagoda Soda Fountain in Rizal Avenue and opened her own business, a beauty parlor, on Mayhalige Street, Santa Cruz. Everything seemed like she had a perfect, peaceful life. But, to the police's shock, they had soon discovered that Lucila Lalu had had several lovers. Her one lover in particular was at that time 19-year-old Florante Relos, whom she set up in an apartment and then eventually supported. With that, let's take a look at the prime suspects of this case. First, they suspected Lucila's husband, Santiano. He had motive to kill her since he was the last one to see her, and he had known the affair shortly before her death. He even threatened to cause harm to them if they didn't end it. But with no other evidence, they couldn't make an arrest. Police then suspected Relos, who was on the rocks with his relationship with Lucila, but insisted that they loved each other. He claimed that he wasn't with Lucila during the time of her death, which was around late Sunday evening to Monday noon. Two of his friends corroborated with this story. After a week of investigation, the police still didn't have a solid lead. Lucila's neighbors claimed they saw three men dragging what looked like a body from Lucila's residence. Vera claimed he saw Lucila hale and hearty hours after the neighbors had seen her body being dragged away, and so on and so forth. There was still no murderer, and her head was yet to be recovered. But on June 14, 1967, roughly 2 weeks after her body parts were found, a certain Jose Luis Santiano came in and claimed he killed Lucila Lalu. He also fitted the police's speculated profile of their killer, which was probably a butcher, a surgeon, or at least a pre-med student due to his or her familiarity of knives as seen on how the body was cut. The killer must have also had a vehicle to dispose of the torso and legs. Santiano was a 28-year-old dental student who was a boarder on the floor just above Lucila's beauty parlor. He was also the son of retired PC Colonel Dominador Santiano, who was a superior of General Papa, one of the investigators of the case. In his confession, he thoroughly rewrote the story the night of her death. He said that he went home around 11 p.m. on Sunday after celebrating his 28th birthday with friends. He was in his bedroom when Lucila entered. She didn't utter a word and started undressing. He claimed to have told her to go down in fear of her husband, but instead Lucila threatened him and said she'd make a scandal in his bedroom. He immediately clamped Lucila by the mouth, panicked by it all. Lucila started struggling at that point. He then blacked out and after a few minutes let go of his hand on her mouth, but she was already dead. Realizing he killed her, he thought of disposing the body by cutting it into several pieces. He got a kitchen knife, cut her legs, wrapped them in newspaper, took a jeepney, and dumped the legs in a garbage can on Malabon Street. This was around midnight, and the rest of her body was left under his bed. Upon returning, he claimed he cut her head next and placed it in a brown paper bag and put it under his bed. He then wrapped Lucila's arms and hands securely behind her and wrapped them with her torso in a newspaper before putting them in a box. At 9 a.m. on Monday, he took the paper bag with her head, took a jeep, took a bus for Diliman, and threw the bag around the grassy area in QC near Scout Albano and Quezon Boulevard Extension. He then bought a kilo of pork, went home, and ate his lunch. At around 2:30 p.m. that day, he went out and watched a movie. He went home around 7 p.m., took the box with the torso, got a taxi, rode a bus, and dumped the box on a roadside on EDSA near the bridge in Guadalupe, Makati. However, a few days later, he retracted his confession and insisted on his innocence. He pointed to 3 men whom he saw choke Lucila in an adjoining room. Since he was a witness, one of the men pointed a gun at him, and he had no choice but to follow their orders, one of which was to fabricate a story pinning him as a killer. Since he didn't mean to kill her anyway, one of the masked men told him that he'd likely get a lighter sentence. When asked what the men looked like, he wasn't sure since they were fully covered and his gunman in particular was wearing glasses. Upon checking his room, which wasn't checked when he first confessed, it was found that his door was forced open, there were bloodstains on the floor, a kitchen knife, a ball-peen hammer covered in blood, a razor blade, and women's stockings, which brought about mixed conclusions. Colonel Santiano, Jose Luis Santiano's father, also said that his son's confession was coerced and forced upon him by Sergeant Labao, one of the investigators of the case. It was also Labao who told investigators to not check Santiano's room for evidence anymore the day he confessed. So did Jose Luis Santiano really kill Lucila Lalu? Or was it a setup by the investigators to solve the crime and boost their credibility to the public? Who are these 3 men that Santiano accused of killing Lalu, and of whom the neighbors also saw carry out the crime? Could it be possible that Aniano Vera could be part of all of this, since he is the one suspect who has the most compelling motive for her death? We'll never know. Until to this day, the case of the Chop Chop lady remains unclosed. Ayun, yun po yung kwento ni Lucila Lalu. Hindi natin alam kung sino ba talaga yung nagpatay sa kanya kasi nga kulang ng ebidensya, mali yung pulis sa pag-imbestiga nila at parang medyo sketchy siya. May tinatago sila at hindi natin malalaman. After 40 years, hindi pa rin nakasara ang case. Muli, ito si Good Morning Saika. Ninais na masaya ang inyong umaga at masaya ang inyong linggo. Happy Halloween, everyone!